Greetings, all Shardvixen here. Alright, today is Know Thyself, but before we do that, I just want to kind of give you a brief thing. I'm not feeling well. This is normal, fibromyalgia. I'm hitting one of those mental health issues that I get sometimes, where things feel so out of control or feel just blah. I'm having problems with my game capture card. I don't want to get a new one. I want to wait till I get my new PC, which the set date for that is January 2021. I know I said December 20, but I really am going to wait for my last back payments to come in and use that as one big lump sum. And I'm going to get an internal capture card. So some of the issue I'm having is that unlike other people who can just plug things in and fix it, I plug things in and break it. So my capture card isn't working the way it should be when I put my chat link in for my PlayStation. Works great for my PlayStation, but now it's mucked up everything else. So I'm going to be working on that in the next week or so. Savjazz21, who's a very busy man, has said he'd help me if I can't get it done. So I wanted to also real quick, my daughter got me some new shirts. If you all remember this sweatshirt I used to wear, it used to be really tight on me, and now it's too big, so I've lost a lot of weight. So let's see. This one is Logan. Woo, woo, woo. That's what it says. Look, I got a man with a hairy chest on my chest. Oh, that's so cool. For me, that's cool. It's not cool for other people, but cool for me. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the next couple authors. Are going to be about authors from my childhood, teenhood, you know, before I became an adult. I was reading adult books, though, but when I was a teen, so these are books that I remember fondly as a kid. Now, I don't have real clear memories of all the books of the author, but I'll guarantee you that that's one of the things I do is I read pretty much all books the author has, and then pick my favorite ones out of the bunch. So don't pay attention to the face over there. I love doing that. Don't pay attention to the face over there. I really don't care if anybody sees him anymore. The whole point of it was because I had confidentiality clause from going to school, and that's going to end in the next year or so. So there won't be any more. It's from the moment I graduated from school, 7 years out, because that's during your internship stuff. So my last client would have been in 2014. 7 years from now, it would be 2021. So I'm going to be good. And after that, you know, if anybody says, I know who you are. Okay, cool, thanks. Like I said, the only people I don't want knowing who I am is coming around is people from my past. Anyway, so we're going to talk about, and I'm going to mess these names up because we all know that I can't talk anymore. I couldn't talk ever, but now I can really not talk. So Zulfa Kitley Snyder was a writer who, interesting enough, in my 6th grade class, my teacher gave me a book of hers, The Changeling, which I had read and made book reports. So I had read it before, you know, my 6th grade class. I went to an elementary school that went from K to 6th, and then I go to the junior high, which is 7th and 8th. And then we went to high school. So I started school on one part of the town. I lived in the same place, but they changed the boundaries. So I started out with one part of the town with a bunch of people. Then I got moved to a different part of town with another bunch of people. I went to middle school. I moved in, let's see, I did kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, at one school, and then I moved to the other school and did 4th, 5th, 3rd grade. Okay, so it's kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade at one school. Then I moved for 4th and 5th was year-round school, and 6th grade at another school. And then from 6th grade, then I went to junior high. At junior high, both kids that I went to school with from both classes were in that school. And then in high school, we all separated again, and I went to school with the people from the second school not the first school. Very odd thing. I was always a reader. I'd been a reader, like I said. I started reading specifically as soon as they taught me in first grade. I took off with it because I wanted to read comic books. And then I started reading books. But I don't have a clear memory of books till I was about, well, I know I read a lot of kid picture book styles, which we'll talk about on another time, like Dr. Seuss, Bill Pete, stuff like that I read, could read to myself and look at the pictures. But I have to say, probably about third or fourth grade, I started reading what would be considered middle school kids stuff, because by the time I was in middle school, I was reading high school and college style, and then after that, it was just adult books. But some of the books that I remember very fondly, and I'd say I probably was in between, like I said, third and sixth grade, is Snyder's books. And the one that comes to mind first, besides The Changeling, was the Egyptian Game. I think it's because of her book, the Egyptian Game, that I got interested in the history of the Egyptian pharaohs. And from that book, I started reading other books, and one of my favorite books that is the only book by the author that I read is Hatshepsut, which was the proposed female pharaoh who was blighted off of history because she was female, and then they made her sound like she was male because she was female. But in the Egyptian Game, it's a bunch of kids get together and find pieces of stuff from this antique shop, and one of them is the head of Nefertiti, and they all band together to play out being Nefertiti and her court. And in the background of the story, though, there's children murders going on, and attackers and things like that, and you start to get to know more about the people. But then the game ends because the story is the owner of the antique shop has been watching them and realized, no longer it's a secret anymore. I love the book because the whole idea of imagining play was a big part in my life. I have one of those lives that wasn't fabulous, like people remember their childhood and it's like, oh, I wish I could be a kid again. I didn't have those kind. I had a very lonely, traumatic, and filled with mental health, but I didn't know at the time that that's what was going on. So I had a very hard life, but not, I wasn't starving. I mean, I didn't have poverty. I wasn't part of the poverty group. I wasn't starving. I was well fed, as much as, a child with sensory issues could be well fed. But there was a lot of being ignored. Stop. I see your face.
Okay, well.
Lean forward. I don't want to edit you out. It's fine. Now that I don't care if they see your face. It's only if you care if they see your face.
I do.
Okay, well, put a mask on or something.
No.
Put a bag over your face and scoot around. Put something right there. Just hang it from there. That's his new room. We've had to readjust stuff. Anyway, so in the Egyptian Game, I liked it because of the idea of these people all getting together who were not really, had a whole lot of friends. They got together and they built this game together. The Changeling, though, I wanted to be Ivy in the Changeling. She wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be a dancer. She came from a not okay lifestyle. Probably hers was worse than mine. But she had created this persona that seemed so beautiful that's what I wanted. And then the heartbreak comes when you realize that she wasn't what she thought she was. She talks about how she's not really a real Carson in it, and the Carsons are the bad family across the tracks kind of thing, and how she's a changeling, like, the brownies or the elves leave behind one of their own and take the real child. I have to say that book is the book that made me start wanting to look at more more not Final Fantasy, but more fantasy style stories. I wanted to know more about changelings. I wanted to know more about spirits. I want to know more of that stuff. Another writer that I really liked, um, which is Ellen Lobo. I'm gonna say it Kondingsenberg. You never have to say these names; you just know them. And I didn't actually know who she was, but she wrote a book called "From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenweiler." Now, it always had to be one of my favorite books growing up because it talked about that and on the my side of the mountain, I think it's what it's called. It talks about these people running away, living in a museum. The older girl takes her younger brother because he knows how to save money and has money. They go to the museum and they live in the museum for a little while. My least favorite part of that book is when she starts to realize that it's not a forever thing. Like, she can't live in the museum forever. But the whole idea of living someplace else was very appealing to me. Running away and hiding was very appealing to me. But how they solved, running around the museum and being part of the museum was so exciting to me. It was something that, like, living in a shopping mall would be, like you could live in a shopping mall. I think it's my precursor to a post-apocalyptic worlds. You take places that are familiar, and then you create them into something else. Witchcraft. I got into witchcraft very early. I think because of these stories, and somebody out there is going to go, see, that's why we shouldn't have let it be allowed to be read. But it gave me an alternative of the kids were looking for the same things I was looking for in the story, so I could connect with them. Because the idea of being a witch and having magical powers is really appealing to someone who has no power or control. I didn't have any power or control in my life. I was, as I've said before, bullied by my peers and not really well liked. And my parents were always either everybody was happy or everybody was very angry at each other because my father was an alcoholic and my brother had handicaps. And so the dynamics of that house was very, very commonplace, as the same as some of these kids in these houses. I felt I wanted to be like Ivy in the Changeling, but I was a lot more like Martha. And Martha was the child that was awkward. She was the child that nobody really liked, and then she hooked up with this person who enlightened her life. I had a friend like that in third grade. Down the street was a young lady that her and I connected, and we really got along and we really enjoyed each other's friendship. But my mother didn't approve of her mother, who was single and dating motorcycle guys, and I'm sure there was drugs there, but I don't remember it. So in the Changeling, Martha feels kind of underwhelmed. She feels like doesn't have anything. My friend and I was kind of that way. I kind of viewed her as like Ivy. But it got to be where I couldn't hang out with my friend because her mother's boyfriend got in trouble with the police, and then my mom got really weird about us hanging out. But she was one of those people that who got along with me, and I got along with her. And then when I saw her a couple years later, that's why I think the Changeling impacted me. You have Martha. Martha and Ivy were together for 5 years, and in the book you just get bits and pieces of their time growing together. They tend to leave, and her family would leave and come back, leave and come back. And that was kind of reflected in my life as well with my friend. And then the next time I saw her when we were junior high, high school, we didn't have the same connection we had when we were younger. We tried, but it just didn't work. And that, for me, is probably the biggest thing about friends with me. I have to have a connection, and connection has to go both ways. I can be friends with anybody, but very few people can really be, in-depth friends with me, so it's really hard sometimes to make that connection. My friend moved in here with us, who's like a sister friend. I've known her since we were in 5th grade. We didn't really become close friends till we were in 7th grade. And then 7th grade all the way until I was 18. We hung out together, and then there was a brief period we didn't hang out, and then we got back together and hung out right before I had my daughter. And then she lived with me for a while when I had a daughter, and then we kind of knew each other off and on. She needed a place, so she's here. That's why he's back over there. But in The Changeling, I remember that I would read the book and just feel like Ivy. The pretend story that Ivy and Martha play, and they have a whole pretend world, ends up for Snyder becoming another book called Under the Green Sky. And that launched into a series of books. But not all of the books she has. She has like 46 books, 47 books that I like. The Witch is a Worm was an okay story. It was kind of odd, even as a kid, I thought, because she exorcises her cat, who she believes is part of the devils and witches, is possessed by these witches and devils. And then, could you not, son? Thank you. And she exercises her cat, and then her cat ends up becoming a normal like cat, and she believes that it wasn't just the cat but her also that she exercised. I mean, there's some really in-depth psychological stories that go on in these kids' books that people don't think about. That's true of all stories. All stories, know how simplistic they are, have a psychological background to them, because that's how we as human beings, we read and translate words in our mind. But so I'm going to share some other ones. I do have other writers that I really enjoyed as a kid, and I'm going to be sharing some of those as well over the next course. Every time we do Know Thyself, if I was to say what books would I try reading if you wanted to go back to a time and see how simplistic writing, not simplistic, but writing for kids might have been. One of the common things I didn't realize when I was a kid, and then when I tried to write a story. I have the story, but I never got it finished in time for a contest for juvenile fiction, is that the adults are pretty much useless in the story. The kids have to figure it out, so they're like mini adults in their heads. And I'd have to say that a lot of people... There was another book she wrote, Condingsburg, which was Jennifer Hedeka, Macbeth, William McKinley, and me, Elizabeth, was also about witches. And I remember reading that one too. But I always felt like I kind of knew that the writers weren't really serious about witchcraft, because they kind of made that reference to it, which always intrigued me whenever the books got banned, because they did get banned in certain libraries, because people were all like, they're about witches and little girls thinking they're witches. But really, it was a step to get to the next level of awareness for these kids. When you don't have any power and control in your life, you have to find it someplace else. And the books gave that for me. They gave me the ability to kind of take myself from where I was at with no control into a story and observe other people having the same issues as I was having. And it helped me get through a lot of problems in my life. So that's it for this one. We'll catch up with some other juvenile authors, and not necessarily juvenile authors, but authors that I read as a juvenile, because there's a lot of adult writers who are now, their writing, because writing has changed so much, is now being seen as young adult rather than adult. Andre Norton, a lot of her books have gone from being adult books in the 60s and the 70s and 80s to now being considered young adult books, because the narrative is considered simplistic. It's not that it's simple writing, it's just simplistic narrative. It's not as in-depth world builders. A lot of the same thing with Marion Zimmerman Bradley, though she has a lot of sexuality concepts in her books. And again, remember we talked about her. She's not a very popular writer anymore because of her private life being such a mucky mess. So that's it. I will catch you all on the flip side. I'm not sure if I'm going to be streaming a lot the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try to stream with Genghis Ron with Fallout. But I might be taking a step back and not doing as much streaming while I figure out what's going on with my capture card. And also to get caught up on some other things I got going on. I want to work really hard on my crafting and getting those videos set up. Alright, so I catch you all on the flip side. I'm out of here. Peace! I hope you all stay safe, healthy, and as happy as possible. I am really struggling, like I said, with mental health right now. So, I'm not unhappy, I'm just... Blah.